Okay, I'm going to go ahead and install VMware ESXi 5.1 tonight on a new USB key. Just a 4 gig USB key. It's a SanDisk inserted. And you'll see I have that first in the boot order. Then I have a Windows drive, and then I have a DVD. The DVD is the VMware ESXi 5.1 DVD, boot DVD. So it's not an upgrade install I'm doing. I'm going to do a fresh install. So this is obviously just my BIOS. Obviously your BIOS settings will look different. So let's watch the machine boot. And because I have it set to boot from a device that is not bootable, I need to go ahead and hit F11 to override and point to the DVD that I want to boot from for this boot only. Future boots, I do want to boot straight from the USB device. You can see my RAID controller come up there, 9265. All right, ready to hit F11, F11, done. And now go ahead and select DVD. And what we should get is the ESXi 5.1 installer. Okay, hit no key for 8 seconds, just let it time out, and the installer will begin. Build 799733. So we began booting the CD at 2 minutes into the video. I might speed this section up to reduce the amount of time you have to watch this fairly slow process. Had we used a USB key to install, it would be a little quicker. This is not something I'm doing frequently, so really not necessarily worth the effort or the time involved in having multiple USB devices and making sure you install from the right one to the right one and so forth. So plus changing the boot order stuff. I kind of prefer to just have one USB inserted and then just stick a DVD in once in a long while when I'm actually doing a ESXi install on this box. You can of course boot from LAN or install from the network. Many ways of installing ESXi. This is the least elegant but simplest. Basically burn an ISO into a bootable DVD and stick it in. Okay, we're at about a minute and a half later, and we are still getting this install environment booted. Okay, it's giving me a warning about the HCL, hardware compatibility list. Looking at the clock, we're 3.5 minutes took to boot to this point. Hit F11 or arrow down or page down. That's a lot of page downs. Okay, F11. It's scanning for possible boot targets or install targets. It's going to find several. There we go. It's very obvious to me which one I want to install from. It's the SanDisk Cruiser. It's a simple USB. It doesn't have a separate partition or anything. It's not one of the old SanDisk Cruisers. Just it was a FAT32 factory default device. Okay, so we're going to install on that 4 gig device. But before we do, I can hit F1 and get some details off of it, which is kind of cool. Let's see what it says about it. Okay, it's telling me there's no pre-existing version, for example. Okay, going to hit enter to continue. It's warning me that the FAT32 that's on there is going to get nuked. Just hit enter. US keyboard. Okay, it's warning me it's going to partition the drive. The tiny little SanDisk Cruisers, they stick out only about, I think, 3 or 4 millimeters from the front of the front bezel on the server. So they're a very handy way to install off a USB stick and not be nervous about accidentally bumping into it or popping it out. That's really the only reason I'm using it. It also does have a red activity light, which I like. So at a glance, I can look at the front of my vSwitch server, is what I call it, and see if the ESXi 5.1 is doing anything. And most of the time, it's doing nothing. It really just boots from it. There's very little writes to a USB stick with VMware once it's booted. So looking at the clock, this started around, about 8 minutes into this video. Let's see how long it actually takes. The install is finished. It says remove the install disk. It actually ejects it, so something to be aware of if you have a door in the front of your server cabinets. So I'm going to simply hit enter, and it's going to reboot. And it should reboot right off the USB flash drive. Okay, here we are at the moment where we start to boot ESXi 5.1 for the first time. Starting now. Oops. All right. So either we have something wrong with the boot order or what, I'm not sure. But obviously I need to figure that out. So I need to look carefully at what boot targets are configured. Easiest thing to do here would just be to hit F11 and do a override for this boot and manually point to the SanDisk cursor and see what happens. Okay, hit F11. Okay, so we've got UEFI and we've got regular SanDisk. Let's try the UEFI one. And that's working. Okay, so we've got a tweak to do there. We have to make sure I have the right SanDisk, and UEFI makes sense because of the file system and the type. Those colors are just an artifact of my out-of-band screen capture. And unfortunately, they're distracting. Should go away shortly. There we go. Okay, this is looking good. Notice it doesn't say the word installer at the top, so we are actually booting ESXi. And what I want to point out now is that reinstalling the hypervisor doesn't really take that long. And you don't lose any VMFS file system data. In other words, your virtual machines are still there, just waiting for you to light them up again. So with just a little bit of configuration, you can get right back in action and pick up right where you left off with the vSphere environment, including the the vSphere appliance, which is also free Linux-based appliance from VMware. So with a bit of work, you can do an awful lot with the hypervisor, and you can reinstall it with minimal worry about really losing much of anything, other than a bit of time. So when this thing comes up, probably the more annoying thing will be having to configure the network. Right? We've got a virtual machine network, and we've got the other networks that I had. So I'll go ahead and get started. Oops. Okay, so that sucker is locked down. What I meant to, and F12, what I meant to do is F2. I have to type the password slowly through this interface to get it right. Okay, it's the DHCP configuration. All right, we've got an added NIC, and then we've got the onboard planar NICs. The added NIC has taken priority, which is interesting. We hit view details. Doesn't say a whole lot, but so my old host was set like that. Sorry, tab. Down arrow is what you need. Tab doesn't work. So when we hit escape, it prompts us. We say yes. And now let's ping something. Okay, so the network's done. Notice it's appending my fully qualified domain name. So we'll put local on there. All right, so that's done. Now it's time to test vSphere client. Now I've got my host file hacked so that ESXi really means 10.10.1.50. So this should log in just fine. New certificate. And notice what it says. So the old version gave an error on Windows 8, for instance. You can see from the way the interface looks, I'm running on Windows 8. So let's give this a try. Okay, so let's try that again and just save the installer. All right, that's fine. But it's not even going to let me log in until I fix that, apparently. So, all right, I'm not going to keep fighting it. I'm just going to point to it. Actually, sorry. Okay, so that's what I meant by point to it. Got my browser pointed there. There's been problems with Chrome in the past, so now we're moving from the initial video, which was installing ESXi. Now we're getting into kicking the tires, configuring a bit. Let's see if Chrome does any better than it used to. Okay, so it looks like that either would work. Now, the vSphere client's what I need to get. Okay, at the moment I'm going to have to get it with a separate method. Work on that. So I have the vSphere client installer ready. And let's give it a run. Sorry about that distraction there. Sorry, let's get some stuff out of the way. Okay, here goes the vSphere client installation. Trying to log in now. It's looking good. And let's get that window recorded on Camtasia here. Okay, so there's our login. Fresh copy of free hypervisor. So what's next? Well, inventory and finding our existing virtual machines. But even before I get to that, let's go to the summary screen. You can see the build version 5.1. Okay. Go to configuration, storage. Excellent. So my RAID controller is obviously seen natively. That's good. That's good. That means the 9265 drivers are there. How about health? Not so much, I don't think. Still going to have to add the stuff for health of the RAID controller. But seeing the storage adapter right there, and seeing our storage. So let's begin with vSphere. Got a lot of test VMs here. And now I'm struggling at the moment to remember. You can just double click it. Sorry, right click, browse it. And struggling to remember where some of my key VMs are. Doing alphabetical sort will help a great deal. vCenter appliance. All right. We need that appliance. So we point to the VMX file. We can look at the date and time. And we can see it's old. So it's the wrong one. So that's good. We can avoid heading down the wrong path and try to find the right one. Now I'm struggling to remember where I put it. vCenter sounds promising. On solid state, that sounds like something I would be doing. So now we find the VMX file. So we'll click there, automatically resize. And you can see that VM was last used fairly recently. Add to inventory. Okay. So this is a bit of a moment of truth because the console didn't work before on Windows 8. Let's see if the console works now without a nasty error. So far it's looking good. So was the virtual machine moved or copied? Let's cancel. Well, let's see. Should we open it? I'm going to cancel. But anyhow, we didn't get an error up here, MKV or whatever that error was. So it looks like this is already working better with Windows 8. So that's good. And here's our version of the vSphere client. All right, what else do we need to do? WinSCP is a good one. What am I going to do with the WinSCP? Well, my host file. So what's needed with my host file? Security. So we have an issue with security here. And we need to turn on SSH. Okay. Windows CP is going to work a whole lot better now. Okay, we're in. ESXi. And there's our host file. Now be a little careful. Really should have a backup of it, but it's really not hard to tweak it. So notice our host file has ESXi, but it doesn't have the vCenter appliance in there. So okay, it looks like that Rhode Island domain name stayed in there. We could leave it alone. That was a DHCP fed domain, or we can call it local. I like to call it just ESXi. vCenter, same thing. In fact, I've never really found nasty side effects to just doing that, or at least that. And to be consistent, we can do that. Hit carriage return at the end. Then there's the VMA. Don't worry about that later. Virtual machine appliance. Okay, so we're going to save it. All right. And now we can try PuTTY. Excellent. So pinging by name is working from the ESXi console. Of course, there's no response yet because we haven't started up that virtual machine. Okay, what else do we have to get going here? Well, because we did a new build, we have some networking work to do. This machine has 3 networks, so as long as I make 3 discrete networks that have the same names as what I had before, we're all set. I had one that was for iSCSI I never used, so I'm not really worried about that right now. All I really need is 2. My virtual machine network. I could put my management network on a separate NIC if I want. And then finally, third NIC is for what I called VPN. Call it a VPN network. You're going to see why in a minute. Okay, so let's go in. So properties. We got a network adapter. The Intel gigabit is doing the management. Okay, let's add a new network, virtual machine network. And let's put it on the first Realtek NIC. I believe it was called VM network before. So notice we've got a VM network. So what we need to do is go into properties and remove that VM network. Done. Now click Add Networking. And just walk right through the wizard. Easy. Add networking again. Use the last remaining unused NIC. Call it VPN. And we're good. So we now have networking configured. So that means this VM, when we go into it and say Edit Settings, we should find its network adapter is assigned to VM network, and it is. So it's all ready to roll. So now I'd say we're actually ready to boot that thing. So back to this question, moved or copied? I'm going to say moved. We don't need to tweak any bits on there. It's a permanent move from one host to another. Okay, so here comes our vCenter host. Now our vCenter server is in need of upgrading. So it needs to be also to 5.1, so I have to worry about that a little later. Let's just get another VM going here. So if we go back to ESXi, configuration, storage, and what else do we got on here? Another key server of mine that I call vZilla, my storage server. Again, we can look at the double click here to get the full file name. We can look at the VMX file and you can see that was fairly recently used. Add to inventory. Do a quick check of its network adapters. It has a VPN network adapter. Excellent. Now, it uses Machi for VPN, and that requires a tweak to the networking. So it's a pretty simple tweak. We go into the VPN network adapter. We go into the VPN switch, and we turn on promiscuous mode. Let me just double check that. Yep, it's the vSwitch you want to tweak. Turn that to accept. Click OK. And we're done there too. And now we can power that on. Answer the moved question. So you get the idea. I've got two important virtual machines to me running on ESX 5.1. ESXi 5.1. Okay? So that's the gist of it. There's more tweaking. There's time configuration. There's auto start of VMs. A lot of little pieces, but I think I've pretty much covered now a fresh install of 5.1, but keeping all your data stores, your VMFS file systems out there and just browsing your way to the VMs you care about and creating them again. A little more complicated if we get into logging into vCenter because I've got to update that version to the latest as well. This is 5.0. I really want to be 5.1 on that before I go adding ESXi hosts to this. So I've got a little more work to do there. That's really a separate video and effort. Okay, I think that covers the most important stuff. And let's take a look here. What's going on with the console? Not quite sure why that's blank. Because we saw a video earlier. Let's see how this one's doing. There we go. That's a good sign. So we're all set. Okay, video's normal. It works under Windows 8. This is good. That's kind of a big deal. Windows 8 VMs already worked fine, but there was some tools issues too. So you know what? Let's wrap up the video with tools. I want to see if anything changes on Windows 8 as well. So back to ESXi, storage, browse the data store, and bring up a Windows 8 template. Right-click, add to inventory, Finish. Okay, so you can't deal with templates, of course, because I'm not in vCenter. So that makes sense. If I had vCenter going, I'd be able to do that. So my apologies, that was a dead end, but let me go to one of the deployed VMs as a workaround. That's absolutely fine. We want the real thing, not a release preview. So let me get one of those. Right here is one. Okay, that was in a suspended state. Should be interesting to see how it does resuming. Didn't like that much. So probably would have been smart if I had powered that thing off before I went to 5.1. Just something to think about. It came up very fast, and we've got VMware tools already loaded, and now we're able to run terminal services if we want, or just stick with the console, which is a little cramped at that resolution. Let's see how we do. Okay, VMware tools is in need of an update. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do an interactive upgrade. Previous install is complete. I'll do another complete install. What I'm particularly curious about is the video driver. So I want to see if the VMware video driver ends up getting installed here. Video just blanked briefly, so that indicates it may have done something with video there. We'll go ahead and reboot. Okay, while it's rebooting, let me get a copy of remote desktop going here. Okay, we're back. The video looked a little odd there. So if we go to Device Manager, there we go. Nice, and the mouse is not laggy, so this is good. This is good. So things have changed with the released code here. Let's see how low Windows 8 will let us go. I know Metro wants 768 vertical. If we hit Windows key, that works. Yeah, so we can't get below that. All right, so to record nicely in this video, I need to get a second copy of terminal services going. 10, 10. Okay, let's do display. And I've got to save a unique mode here. Let me just set that up here. Okay, I'm making an RDP file and just tweaking it a little to make it fit on this unusual resolution that doesn't show in the slider. So there we have it. And it should fit perfectly. Okay, so now we have remote desktop experience with full 3D. And we should get decent speed here, and it's looking very good. For scroll speed there. Okay. What else can we test? Well, we don't have arrow anymore, but it's extremely snappy. But you'd expect it to be over RDP, remote desktop anyway. So let's close RDP. Let's get back to that local console. And here's the thing I really wanted to be trying, and that is the Windows Experience Index with that video driver installed. So if we go Properties of Computer, and we go to have a quick look around here. Okay, we're not activated. Performance. Let's go ahead and rate the computer. And now we just wait. So it'll be interesting to see how this video driver does in this new version of VMware Tools that came along for the ride with ESX 5.1. Okay, so it's finally done here, and we should be able to size this so you can see everything. So let me take a moment to do that now. There we go. I think we should horse around a little to get an idea of what a 2.0 means for desktop graphics. Gaming graphics is 4, which is interesting. So let's first move this to 1280 by 768. All right, that fits perfectly in what I'm recording here. Okay, next, let's try something GPU intensive in this virtual machine. Make things a little clearer. Let me get that going. Okay. So I now have a way to toggle between VMs quickly and show you things like the properties of ESXi. If we go to Properties, Performance, we can do things like CPU and so forth if needed. Let's go back to this. All right, these other VMs are doing almost nothing. CPU is hardly doing anything. Same deal here. So the one we're using here, we're about to abuse. Its CPU was busy, and now it's not. Okay, we seem to have a blank video issue, which is interesting. Let's see if that's popped up on the other ones. No blank video there. And okay, just needed to come back to life there. Not sure what that was about. Maybe I was just impatient. Okay, so let's hit close that. Let's hit up the Metro UI for a game like Pinball. I think it's the most intense thing going. That's pre-installed. Whoops, wrong Metro. So I got to get my mouse cursor in there and hit Windows key, and that worked. Mouse wheel is working. That's pretty cool. Let's hit Windows D. Right back to the desktop. Hit Windows key again. Up comes Metro. Come back to games, right back where we were, but it's struggling to sign in for whatever reason. Oh, I guess it did sign in. Okay, that's installing. What else can we do that's intense? The GPU map sounds good. Spinning the mouse wheel. Pretty darn good. Okay, I'd like to contrast that with remote desktop connection. So we'll have to try out the game on RDP versus local console. Pinball has been installed, it tells me. Let's go right back in. And let's get an idea of the frame rate playing in this mode, with no sound, of course, versus remotely with sound. So this mode doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you get no sound over RDP. Makes more sense because you get sound, but it might be choppier video. I don't really know. And until we try this version of VMware Tools that finally supports Windows 8. And I would guess that Windows Server 2012 also gets the latest video driver. While we wait for that to come up, let's get a copy of Windows Server 2012. Going. It's a template. Oh. Okay, back to Windows 8. Let's see if that pinball is ready. Okay, it's crazy choppy and CPU incredibly busy. How many CPUs did I give it? Only one. Not so smart. So that's the default install when you do a simple install. So basically unplayable. Now let's see, before I go conclude much of anything, let's see if remote desktop gives us anything better. We get sound. So look at the CPU here, kind of off the charts busy. And spacebar to launch the ball, and we're only getting like 2-3 frames a second. Yeah, not too good. Okay, so let's try again. Let's give it 4 gig of RAM. not that it needed it. Let's give it 4 cores. And a quick reminder of my settings, in case you haven't seen some of my other videos. We got the video card here on auto. Enable 3D support turned on. And actually that shouldn't be there anymore. Oh, sorry, that's my network adapter. This shouldn't be there and it's not, okay. So I've canceled that. I didn't make any changes to settings. Okay, so now we've got things set a little faster. And if we do Control-Alt-Insert to pass it through the VM and run Task Manager, we should see four CPUs. Only seeing one, but I'm trying to remember the new Task Manager. Hang on. Oh, that's acting a little weird. All right, well, let me go in with terminal services again, which is the only way to get sound. Looks like I remember my credentials turned off for some reason. We have 4 gig of RAM, so it did change stuff, but it's still only one socket, is all this represents now. All right. Whoops, wrong metro key. Gotta remember to move that to my other window. Back to there, click there first. Oh, okay. Let me just move metro, hang on. Okay, moving my own metro and my local desktop somewhere else. Now, remote desktop. Let's see. Do I have the Windows key map so it goes remote? I do not, so I need to fix that. And always ask for credentials should be off. And keyboard needs to head the Windows key combination over to the remote machine. All right, that should work a whole lot better. Windows key working, and games, pinball, something's going on with sign in there. Quick peek over here, performance. There's still a modal dialog open. Hang on, I gotta find that. There we go, get rid of that. Look at performance. CPU again, of course, crazy busy. This pinball tries to start here. Okay, now Camtasia is recording 30 frames a second, so that's not, whoops, did not mean to do that. Hit the Windows key, that was a mistake. That poses an interesting problem, and that is how to pick up where you left off. Let's try Control-Delete, which is Control-Insert in a VM. So Control-Insert, sorry, just bring up Task Manager. Okay, processes, games, pinball. Switch to pinball. There we go. That worked. Zoom game. Wow, one keystroke and I really hosed it. So right next to the control key for the flipper is Windows key, which takes you out of the game. Wow, that's pretty good. Wow. I'm getting 7 frames a second. The game's pretty playable. There's some lag when you don't want it. You get the flipper, so I have to anticipate, and I just lost that point. So yeah, there's still some lag. So we'd really want a true GPU assigned to the VM to have even better performance, but it's good that it can even do this. I think we're done with that experiment. And we really should kill the pinball experience. And dump it to the bottom. Okay, pinball is closed. Virtual CPU should settle down. It is not. Oh, it did. I was just impatient. Okay. So, how do we do on Windows Server? It's booted now as well, and it's going to have an old version of tools. Okay, let's get a new install of tools going on that as well. Guest install tools. Interactive. You see VMware tools complaining now that it loaded, that it's old. It'd be good for me to show you Device Manager before we get started with that install. So right-click, Manage. I keep forgetting. Sorry, it's been a couple weeks since I ran it, and now I'm kind of forgetting. How about Windows Q? That'll work. Device Manager. And you can see there's a problem with loading that VMware SVGA adapter. Doesn't like it. Won't load it. Okay? So, ancient, 2011. Makes sense it wouldn't work. So, back to VMware Tools. Mouse is a little herky-jerky. I don't know if this video is really going to show that, but it's a little pleasant to mouse around this VM. There's definitely a noticeable lag. While that thing's rebooting, let's get an idea of what it has. 2 CPUs, 4 gig of RAM. So that one is has reasonable resources. Did it again. Left that on top. Close that. Okay. We're back in. Nice. Just like Windows 8. Got a new video driver. April. I was expecting even newer. Let's see what it did to the mouse. March. Okay. Storage controller. Virtual LSI. February. All right, kind of a mixed bag there. Agent. Okay. So this has turned into a pretty good look at virtual machines behavior. How about I go back and just look at, I'll wrap up this video with a quick look at what else has changed in 5.1 that's maybe among the more obvious differences. That screen sure looks the same. There's a summary of my hardware. It warns me about SSH still. Okay. Purge machine shows their status. Nice summary here. Overall CPU performance settled right down. All my storage showing, as we talked about earlier. Okay, host cache configuration. Let's see if anything changed in there. Okay, that menu looks the same. It's pointing to an SSD that I have. And it's saying, do I want to do something with the free space on it? When memory pressure gets high, it'll swap out to there instead of a slower drive. Okay, so installing my LSI monitoring stuff is still going to be needed. And quick look here, it doesn't look like much has changed visually there either. Okay, hope you found this, wow, 15-minute video or so. With some sped up portions, so probably come down to like 40 when I publish this. Hopefully you found this helpful. It's a good quick first look at ESXi 5.1. Thank you for watching, and as always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Good night.